Today, we're going to unpack a court case with a result that, I gotta say, seems completely backwards on the surface. It's a story that really makes you wonder, when a marriage ends, what actually matters more? The money you came in with or the life you built together? Okay, so let's get into it. Meet the couple at the heart of this, the Keeleys. When they tied the knot, the financial picture was, well, incredibly lopsided. He had over $670,000 in assets. She had just over $100,000. That is a massive 6-to-1 difference. You'd think that pretty much settles how things are going to end up, right? Well, think again. Because when the final judgment came down, the wife, the one who started with so much less, walked away with 55% of the total assets. The husband, he got 45%. So how in the world does that happen? How do you start with a 6-to-1 advantage and end up on the losing side of the split? That is the exact puzzle we are about to solve. This whole story comes from a 2023 Australian family court case, Keeley and Keeley. And it really pulls back the curtain on how a court actually measures a marriage. And spoiler alert, it is about a whole lot more than just the numbers on a spreadsheet. Yeah, because at the end of the day, this case was about two people with two completely different versions of their life together. And it was the judge's job to listen to both of them and figure out what fair truly looks like. So, just to give you some context, here's the timeline. They got married back in 2008, had 2 kids, and then separated in 2016. So, an 8-year marriage. But the legal fight dragged on for years, with the final decision only coming down in 2023. A very long road. So what were these two different stories? Well, the husband's was pretty straightforward. Hey, I brought most of the money into this marriage. That's what should matter most. But the wife's argument was about something else entirely. She said, look, my role as a mom was made incredibly difficult by his actions. And now, as the kid's main parent, my financial future is way more uncertain than his. And her whole case really rested on this powerful legal concept called a Kenan claim. This is fascinating. It's a way for a court to say, you know what, your contributions as a parent actually count for more because you had to do it all under the extreme stress of family violence. It's the law recognizing that not all work is done on a level playing field. So, how does a judge take these two very emotional, very different stories and turn them into a cold, hard number? They don't just guess. In Australia, there's a really methodical 4-step process they use to get to what's called a just and equitable result. Let's walk through it. It's actually brilliantly logical. First, you figure out what the total pot is, everything they own. Second, you look backwards and assess everyone's contributions, financial and otherwise. Third, and this is the really important part, you look to the future and make adjustments based on who needs what. And finally, you just step back and ask, does this feel right? All right. Step 1 was pretty straightforward. The court added everything up and found the total asset pool was just shy of $1 million, $973,815 to be exact. Now we get to step 2, looking at contributions. And this is where it gets interesting, because the court actually agreed with the husband that his initial money was a big deal. The judge assessed the contributions as 57.5% in his favor. So at this point, you're thinking, okay, he's on track to get the larger share. So, what changed? Well, this quote from the judge tells you everything. The court believed the wife's Kenan claim. It found that the husband's hostility to her parents basically cut her off from her support system, which made her job as a mom, her non-financial contribution, so much harder. It's a perfect example of how personal conduct can have a real financial consequence. But here's the crazy part. Even after factoring all that in, the husband was still ahead based on past contributions. The real bombshell, the one thing that completely flips this entire case, had nothing to do with the past. It was all about the future. Because after tallying up everything that happened during their 8 years together, the court then had to shift its focus and look at the next 10, 15 years. And this is where the scales of justice really started to move. And that brings us to step 3, future needs. The court saw 2 totally different futures. For the husband, yeah, he had a higher income, better earning potential, but for the wife, she was looking at being the primary parent for 2 kids for the next decade, which, as you can imagine, would seriously hurt her ability to earn money. So, to account for that huge difference in their futures, the judge made a really significant adjustment, 12.5%, and it was all in favor of the wife. This single number was the absolute game changer. And this chart just lays out the final math perfectly. The husband starts at 57.5%, but you subtract that 12.5% adjustment and he lands at 45. The wife starts at 42.5, you add the 12.5% and she ends up at 55%. And just like that, the entire outcome is flipped on its head. Mystery solved. So stepping back, what does this all mean? What does the story of Kaylee and Kaylee really teach us? Well, it gives us some really powerful lessons about what justice and fairness actually look like when the rubber meets the road. Here are the big takeaways. First, the future can matter more than the past. The massive responsibility of raising children can absolutely outweigh a big head start financially. Second, things like parenting are not just soft contributions. They have real, measurable value. Third, bad behavior isn't just something to feel guilty about. It can actually cost you money. And finally, coming into a marriage with a lot more cash is absolutely no guarantee you'll leave with it, especially after years together. And if you had any doubt about the judge's logic, get this. The husband tried to appeal the decision, and the higher court shot it down, calling it devoid of any merit whatsoever. I mean, that's about as harsh as it gets. He was even ordered to pay $25,000 for his ex-wife's legal bills. When you boil it all down, this case leaves us with a really powerful idea. It shows that in the real world, justice isn't just about punching numbers into a calculator. It's about fundamental fairness. And as the Kaylee story proves, on the scales of justice, caring for the future of children weighs a whole lot more heavily than counting the money of the past.